The arena was ancient, built into the Temple of First Light during an age when the Volanti still settled their disputes with blood. Crystalline walls rose around a circular floor of polished stone. Above, the nebulous colors swirled like a living painting, beautiful and indifferent to the violence about to unfold below. Billions watched across the empire. Every screen, every display, every communication device showed the same image: a human standing alone on one side of the arena, a Volanti lord standing on the other. Grand Duke Morathax was terrifying. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, his silver-blue body wrapped in ancient armor that had seen 1,000 battles. Psionic energy crackled around his hands, the power of a mind trained for centuries in the art of killing. His violet eyes held nothing but contempt. Marcus wore simple clothes. His only weapon was a borrowed sword, its edge sharp but ordinary. He had no armor. He had no special powers. He had nothing but himself. "You are brave, human," the Grand Duke said, his voice echoing through the arena. "Foolish beyond measure, but brave. I almost admire you." Marcus adjusted his grip on the sword. His hands were sweating. His heart pounded. But he kept his voice steady. Less talking, more fighting. The Grand Duke smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "As you wish." He attacked. Marcus had expected speed, but this was something beyond speed. The Grand Duke moved like lightning, his armored fist swinging toward Marcus's head before Marcus could even process what was happening. Marcus threw himself sideways, and the fist passed close enough to ruffle his hair. The wind alone almost knocked him down. The next attack came immediately. And the next. And the next. Marcus dodged, rolled, stumbled, and fell. The Grand Duke was faster, stronger, and could predict movements through psionic foresight. It was like fighting a hurricane that could read minds. Blood appeared on Marcus's arms, his face, his chest. 100 small cuts, each one a reminder that the Grand Duke was toying with him. The Volanti Lord could end this fight in a heartbeat. Instead, he drew it out, demonstrating his superiority for the watching galaxy. Is this what humanity sends against us? The Grand Duke laughed. A wounded animal that cannot even land a single blow? Your princess chose poorly. Marcus spat blood and raised his sword again. His body screamed with pain. Every logical thought told him to surrender, to accept defeat, to save himself from more suffering. But Marcus had never been good at logic. "You still don't get it," he gasped. "You never will." He attacked Dodd. It was clumsy. It was desperate. It was utterly irrational. The Grand Duke's psionic foresight showed him exactly what Marcus would do, exactly how the sword would swing, exactly where to step to avoid the blow and counter with a killing strike. Except Marcus changed his move at the last moment. He did something that made no tactical sense, that served no strategic purpose, that contradicted every prediction the Grand Duke's ancient mind had made. The sword tip caught the Grand Duke's cheek. A thin line of blue blood appeared. The arena fell silent. The Grand Duke touched his face, stared at the blood on his fingers, and his eyes widened with shock. "Impossible," he whispered. Marcus smiled through his pain. "Humans don't fight to win. We fight because we can't stop fighting. We fight because giving up hurts worse than losing. We fight because someone we love is watching, and we would rather die on our feet than live on our knees." He raised his sword again. His arm shook. His legs barely held him. By every reasonable measure, he should have been unconscious on the ground. "You can see the future," Marcus continued. "You can read intentions. You know exactly what logical move I should make." He laughed, and the sound was wild, almost mad. "But I'm not making logical moves. I'm just too stupid to quit." The Grand Duke attacked again, faster this time, furious. But fury was emotion. Fury was something he had not felt in centuries. Fury clouded his perfect foresight, disrupted his calculated movements, made him reckless. Marcus exploited every moment of that recklessness. He took blows that should have killed him and kept moving. He landed cuts that should have been impossible and pressed forward. He fought not with skill but with sheer, stubborn, irrational refusal to stop. The watching empire saw something they had never imagined. They saw a human, broken and bleeding, pushing a Volante lord to his limits. They saw determination that defied mathematics. They saw courage that logic could not explain. And they saw the moment when the Grand Duke, driven beyond reason by frustration and rage, made his final mistake. He overextended. He committed to a killing blow that left him open for one brief moment. His foresight had abandoned him, overwhelmed by the chaos of fighting an opponent who did not think like anything he had ever faced. Marcus did not hesitate. His sword found the gap in the ancient armor. The blade sank deep into the Grand Duke's chest. Silence stretched across the galaxy. The Grand Duke fell to his knees. Blue blood poured from the wound. His violet eyes stared at Marcus with something approaching wonder. "How?" he whispered. "How did you?" "I calculated every possibility." Marcus stood over him, barely able to remain standing himself. "You calculated what a logical person would do." "I'm not logical. I'm human. We do impossible things for people we love. That's what makes us dangerous." The Grand Duke's eyes closed. His body slumped to the ground. The trial by combat was over. Marcus had won. Lyra's coronation took place 3 days later. She became Empress Lyrathaxi, ruler of 10,000 worlds, leader of the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. The ceremony was broadcast everywhere, and everywhere. Beings of countless species watched a new era begin. In her first act as Empress, Lyra offered humanity a formal alliance. Not as children to be guided, not as experiments to be studied, as equals, as partners, as friends. "We forgot something important," she told the assembled billions. "We forgot that strength without heart is meaningless, that logic without love is empty, that the greatest power in the universe is not found in weapons or technology, but in the simple choice to help someone who needs it." She looked at Marcus, standing in the crowd, still bandaged from his wounds. "A human taught us this," she continued. "A human who gave up everything for a stranger. A human who fought impossible odds because he believed it was right. Humanity is not our past. Humanity is our future. Together, we will build something better." Years passed. The alliance between humans and Volante grew stronger. Trade routes opened. Knowledge was shared. Children of both species grew up together, learning from each other, becoming something new. Marcus never became a politician or general. He refused titles and wealth. He accepted only one position: Imperial Cultural Ambassador to humanity. He spent his days building bridges between civilizations, teaching others what he had always known in his heart. One evening, many years later, he sat in a garden on the Volante homeworld. Gray streaked his hair now. Lines marked his face. But his eyes were still warm, still kind, still the eyes of a young man who once chose to help a frightened girl. Lyra sat beside him. Even after centuries of rule, she still made time for him. Some bonds once formed never fade. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Everything you lost? Your career, your life, all those years of suffering?" Marcus watched children playing nearby. Human and Volante together, their laughter mixing in the air. He thought about the young officer he had been, standing on the observation deck of Kepler 7, dreaming of a promotion that now seemed so small. "I was nobody important," he said. "A junior officer with a good chance at a good job. Now I'm the man who helped change the galaxy." He took her hand, as he had taken it so many times before. "I think I got the better deal." Above them, Stars burned in the eternal night. Somewhere out there, on 1,000 worlds, humans and Volanthi were building a future together. All because one man long ago had seen a scared girl and chosen to help. That was the human way. It always had been Dot, and perhaps, thanks to Marcus Chun, it always would be. The War Council met in the temple's central chamber. Ancient crystals glowed around them, casting rainbow patterns across the worried faces of Lyra's commanders. They studied holographic displays showing the enemy fleet, counting ships and weapons, calculating odds that grew worse by the minute. Grand Duke Morathax had brought enough firepower to destroy the temple 1,000 times over. His terms were simple: surrender Lyra and Marcus within 1 day, and everyone else would be allowed to leave peacefully. Everyone knew this was a lie. The Grand Duke never left witnesses alive. The Volanthi commanders discussed logical strategies. They spoke of acceptable losses and optimal retreat patterns. They calculated which escape routes had the highest probability of success. Their voices were calm and measured, even as they planned their own deaths. Marcus listened and watched. He saw brilliant minds working together, processing information faster than any human could. But he also saw something else. He saw a fundamental blindness, a weakness built into their very way of thinking. "You are planning to lose," he said suddenly. The room fell silent. Every violet eye turned toward him. "Excuse me?" One of the older commanders frowned. "Human, this is a military council. Your presence here is already unusual. Do not interrupt. Let him speak." Lyra's voice cut through the tension. "He has earned that right." Marcus stepped forward. "You are calculating the most efficient way to die. You're figuring out how to save the most people during a defeat that you've already accepted as inevitable. But you're not trying to win. Winning is not possible," the commander replied. "The mathematics are clear. We are outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. Logic dictates. Logic is your enemy's weapon too." Marcus began pacing, his mind racing. Grand Duke Morathax is smart. He's logical. He's been planning this moment for years. Every move he makes is calculated perfectly. He knows exactly how Volanthi commanders think because he thinks the same way. He stopped and looked at them. "So stop thinking that way. Give him something he cannot calculate. Give him chaos." The commanders exchanged confused glances. Chaos was not something Volanthi appreciated. Their entire civilization was built on order, prediction, and control. But Lyra leaned forward, her eyes bright with interest. "Explain." Over the next hour, Marcus laid out his plan. It was insane. It was irrational. It violated every principle of Volanthi military doctrine. The commanders protested at every step, calling it foolish, impossible, suicidal. But Lyra listened. And slowly, she began to smile. The plan used everyone's unique skills. Zara would hack into the Grand Duke's communication network and feed him false information. Crix would coordinate fake defections, making it appear that mercenary units were switching sides in exchange for money. Dr. Tanaka would broadcast academic debates about Volanthi succession law across public channels, causing political factions to hesitate and argue among themselves. And Marcus would create the biggest lie of all, using equipment salvaged from the temple's ancient systems. They constructed fake signal sources that mimicked the signatures of a massive human fleet. These phantom ships appeared to be approaching from the direction of human space, suggesting that Earth had decided to intervene in Volanthi affairs. It was impossible. Humans had no such fleet. The distances involved would take months to cross. Any logical analysis would reveal the deception immediately. But that was exactly the point. "The Grand Duke will know it's fake," Marcus explained. "But he'll also know that we know he knows. So he'll start wondering why we would try such an obvious trick. He'll start looking for the real trap. He'll start doubting his own information. You want to make him paranoid, Lyra said slowly. You want to poison his mind with uncertainty. I want to make him feel something for the first time in centuries. Marcus grinned. Fear. The plan began at midnight. Zara's fake transmissions flooded the Grand Duke's channels. His commanders received contradictory orders, reports that made no sense, warnings about threats that did not exist. Confusion spread through the enemy fleet like fire. Crix's pretend defections made things worse. Ships that appeared to switch sides turned out to be loyal. Ships that appeared loyal suddenly opened fire on their neighbors. The Grand Duke could no longer trust his own forces. Dr. Tanaka's broadcasts created political chaos. Noble houses that supported the Grand Duke began receiving messages questioning his legitimacy. Ancient laws were cited, precedents were debated, and suddenly, the simple matter of killing a princess became a complicated legal nightmare. And the phantom, human fleet grew closer with every hour. Its impossible presence demanding explanation. Grand Duke Morithax was not stupid. He understood that something strange was happening. But understanding and knowing how to respond were different things. For the first time in his long life, he faced a situation that did not follow logical rules. He made a mistake. He split his fleet to address multiple phantom threats, weakening his main force. Lyra struck at that moment of weakness. Her small force attacked not the enemy ships, but the communication relays that held the fleet together. In the chaos of battle, with information unreliable and allies uncertain, the Grand Duke's commanders hesitated. Precious seconds were lost. Ships collided. Weapons fired at wrong targets, and while the fleet burned around him, Lyra broadcast her evidence to the entire empire. The crystal Marcus had carried for 3 years, contained recordings of the Grand Duke planning his brother's murder. It showed his secret meetings with assassins. It revealed his manipulation of the Krell mercenaries who had attacked Lyra on Kepler 7. Every lie, every scheme, every betrayal was exposed before billions of watching eyes. The Grand Duke's support crumbled. Noble houses withdrew their ships. Political allies suddenly discovered previous engagements elsewhere. Within hours, the massive fleet that had seemed unstoppable was reduced to a handful of loyal fanatics. But the Grand Duke himself remained. And Volanti law gave him one final option. He challenged Lyra to trial by combat. Under ancient tradition, the accused could demand to settle disputes through battle rather than courts. If Lyra refused, she would appear weak. If she accepted, she would face a warrior who had trained for centuries. It was a trap with no escape, unless someone else fought in her place. Marcus stepped forward. Before Lyra could speak, I invoke my right as her champion, he announced to the watching galaxy. I will fight on behalf of Princess Lyrathax Velkinum. Silence fell across the communication channels. A human, challenging a Volanti noble to combat. It was unthinkable. It was laughable that the Grand Duke's cold voice replied through the speakers. I accept. Tomorrow at dawn. And when I have killed you, human, I will make sure your princess watches every moment. Lyra grabbed Marcus's arm, her eyes wide with fear. No, I cannot allow this. He will destroy you. Marcus took her hands in his. You are going to be empress, he said gently. You need to be seen as above this. You need to be the leader who unites, not the killer who divides. Let me be your sword one more time. Tears filled her violet eyes. I cannot lose you. Not after everything. Not after you came all this way. Marcus smiled. Then I'll just have to win. He walked away to prepare for battle, leaving behind a princess who was terrified for the first time in years. Not terrified for herself. Not terrified for her throne. Terrified for the human who had already given everything for her, and was preparing to give even more. Marcus could not reach the Temple of First Light alone. Volanti space was vast and dangerous, filled with patrol ships and checkpoints that would capture or kill any unauthorized human. He needed help. He needed people he could trust. He found his crew in unlikely places. Zara was first. She was a former intelligence officer from the United Earth Service, discharged for asking too many questions about classified operations. Marcus had saved her brother from a crook gambling lord 2 years ago, as she had promised to repay the debt. Now she stood in his tiny shuttle, arms crossed, her dark eyes sharp with curiosity. "You want to break into the most powerful alien empire in the galaxy," she said. "For a girl you met once, 3 years ago." "She saved my life that night," Marcus replied. "I owe her." Zara smiled slowly. "I always knew you were crazy. That's why I like you." Crix came next. He was a Krell defector, massive and scarred, his tusks broken from old battles. When Marcus saw him waiting at a fuel station, he reached for his weapon. But Crix raised his empty hands in peace. "I was there that night," Crix said. "On Kepler 7. I was the youngest of the mercenaries sent to capture the girl. I watched you fight. I watched you bleed for a stranger." His deep voice rumbled with emotion. "No Krell would do such a thing. It changed something inside me. I have been watching over you since then, keeping you safe when I could. Now let me help you openly." Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Welcome aboard." The last member was Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a xenanthropologist who had spent her entire life studying the Volanti from afar. She was small and quiet, with gray hair and gentle eyes that hid a fierce intelligence. When Marcus explained his mission, she nearly wept with joy. "The Temple of First Light," she whispered. "No human has ever seen it. The secrets it holds about Volanti civilization, about our own origins." She clasped Marcus's hands. "I will help you. Whatever it takes." Together, they traveled into Volanti space. The journey was dangerous. They passed through asteroid fields and dodged patrol ships. They bribed corrupt officials and hid from scanning systems. Zara's intelligence training proved valuable for avoiding detection. Crix's knowledge of mercenary routes opened paths that should have been closed. Dr. Tanaka's understanding of Volanti culture helped them blend in when they had to. But it was during this journey that Marcus learned the truth about Lyra, about the Volanti, and about humanity itself. Dr. Tanaka shared her research one night as they drifted through the darkness between star systems. The Volanti civilization was ancient beyond human understanding, spanning millions of years. They had traveled the galaxy when Earth was still a ball of molten rock. They had seen species rise and fall like waves upon an endless ocean, and they had seeded humanity's ancestors on Earth long ago. "We are their children," Dr. Tanaka explained. "Not directly, but biologically connected. The Volanti altered primitive primates on Earth, accelerated their evolution, hoping to create something new. Then they left us alone to grow on our own." Marcus struggled to accept this. Why? What did they want? They were curious. And perhaps lonely. Dr. Tanaka's eyes grew distant. The Volanti evolved beyond emotion millions of years ago. They became creatures of pure logic, cold and calculating. But they remembered what feeling was like, and they missed it. They wanted to see if a younger species could achieve what they had lost. This explained so much. This explained why the Volanti Empire was so powerful yet so cold. This explained why they watched humanity from afar without interfering. This explained the strange connection Marcus felt to Lyra, and the warmth he had seen in her eyes when no other Volanti showed such things. But there was more. The crystal around Marcus's neck contained information that revealed Lyra's true identity. She was not just any Volanti noble. She was Lyrithax Velkinum, only daughter of Emperor Keltharax, heir to an empire of 10,000 worlds. 3 years ago, she had fled an assassination attempt organized by her uncle, Grand Duke Marithax, who wanted the throne for himself. She had come to Kepler-7 seeking help from a human contact, a spy who was supposed to protect her. That spy had betrayed her. The Krell mercenaries had been waiting, and then Marcus had appeared. A random human, nobody important, who chose to fight and bleed for a stranger, simply because she needed help. According to Volanti law, what Marcus had done was extraordinary. His selfless act had created something called Vel Arathan, which meant soul recognition in human terms. The Volanti believed that true sacrifice left a mark upon both souls involved, binding them together across space and time. In the eyes of their ancient laws, Marcus was now Lyra's champion, her defender, with legal standing in their courts equal to any noble. That's why they've been hunting you, Zara realized. You're not just a witness. You're a threat to the Grand Duke's claim to the throne. If you appear before the Volanti courts with that crystal, you could expose everything. The crew pushed forward with new urgency. They reached the Temple of First Light after weeks of travel. It was beautiful beyond description, a massive structure of crystal and light floating in the heart of a nebula. Colors swirled around it like living paintings. Ancient Volanti ships orbited its towers, their designs unlike anything in the modern empire. And there, standing in the temple's great hall, was Lyra. She had changed. The frightened girl from Kepler-7 had become a warrior princess. She wore armor that gleamed like starlight. Her silver-blue face was harder now, marked by years of struggle and loss. Behind her stood a small army of loyalists, soldiers who had remained faithful to the true heir. But when she saw Marcus, her composure broke. "You came," she whispered. Tears rolled down her cheeks, shimmering like diamonds. "After everything I cost you. After everything you lost because of me. You came." Marcus walked toward her. The years of hardship melted away. The pain and loneliness and doubt faded into nothing. He stood before the heir to the greatest empire in the galaxy, a princess who commanded armies and worlds, and he smiled. "I told you," he said softly, "I would make that choice again. Every time. Forever." Lyra embraced him. For one perfect moment, nothing else mattered. Not the war raging outside. Not the enemies closing in. Not the impossible odds they faced. Then alarms began to sound throughout the temple. Grand Duke Marithax's fleet had arrived. Hundreds of warships surrounded them, blocking every escape route. The Grand Duke himself broadcast a message across all channels, his cold voice echoing through the ancient halls. "Surrender the false heir," he commanded. "And her human pet. This ends now." Lyra pulled away from Marcus and looked at her small army of loyal followers. They were outnumbered 100-1. Logic said they could not win. Mathematics said they should surrender. But Marcus Chun had never been good at mathematics. "We need to talk," he told the princess. "I have an idea." 3 years had passed since Marcus Chun lost everything. 3 years of drifting from one job to another, from one station to the next, always moving, never belonging. The young officer who once dreamed of diplomatic glory now spent his days translating for smugglers, pirates, and anyone else willing to pay. His reputation followed him like a shadow. People whispered about the fool who threw away his career for an alien girl. Some laughed at him. Others pitied him. A few admired him quietly but said nothing. In the rough edges of the frontier, admiration did not pay for food or shelter. Marcus lived in a small room on a mining station called Rockfall. The walls were thin, the air smelled of chemicals, and the bed was barely large enough for his body. But the rent was cheap, and the station master did not ask questions. It was enough. The crystal Lyra had given him hung on a chain around his neck. He had tried many times to open it, to understand its purpose, but it remained a mystery. Sometimes it felt warm against his skin, as if something inside it was still alive. He could not bring himself to throw it away. It was his only proof that the girl had been real, that his sacrifice had meant something. Despite his circumstances, Marcus had not become bitter. He spent his free hours teaching language classes to refugee children who lived in the station's lower levels. Their parents had fled from war zones and failing colonies, bringing nothing but hope for a better future. Marcus could not give them much, but he could give them words. Words opened doors. Words built bridges. Words could change lives. He also helped settle disputes for families too poor to afford legal assistance. His knowledge of alien languages and customs made him valuable in ways that surprised even himself. People began to seek him out, not for his past failures, but for his present kindness. One evening, a Volante merchant approached him in the station's only bar. The merchant was tall and elegant, with the silver-blue skin and violet eyes that Marcus remembered so well. He wanted Marcus to translate a simple trade agreement, nothing unusual. But he paid 3 times the normal rate and vanished immediately after, leaving no name or contact information. Marcus found this strange but thought little of it. Strange things happened on the frontier. Then, a week later, a group of Krell mercenaries arrived on the station. They wore the same insignia as the ones Marcus had fought years ago. They asked questions about a human male who had helped a Volante girl escape. They showed his picture. They offered money for information. Marcus kept his head down and stayed in his room until they left. His heart pounded for hours afterward. Someone was still looking for him. Someone had not forgotten. More strange events followed. His room was broken into while he was teaching, but nothing was taken. Whoever searched his belongings had been looking for something specific. A mysterious woman began following him through the station's corridors, always staying just out of clear view. Messages appeared on his communication device from unknown senders, containing only coordinates and times that meant nothing to him. The galaxy itself seemed to be shifting. News reports spoke of crisis in the Volante Empire. The ancient emperor Caltharax, who had ruled for 300 years, was dying. There were rumors of civil war, of noble houses fighting over the succession, of assassination attempts and political murders. Human colonies near Volante space grew nervous. Trade routes became dangerous. Fear spread like a disease. Marcus paid attention to these reports in ways he had not before. He did not know why, but something told him that his fate was connected to these distant events. Then came the job offer that changed everything. A representative from a human mining consortium contacted Marcus. They needed a translator for a secret diplomatic meeting with Volante representatives. The location was hidden, the participants were anonymous, and the pay was enormous. Enough money to buy a small ship. Enough to start a new life anywhere in the galaxy. Marcus accepted. He needed the money, and he was tired of running from shadows. The meeting was held on an abandoned research station in the depths of uncharted space. Marcus arrived expecting nervous executives and careful aliens. Instead, he found armed soldiers wearing the insignia of a Volante noble house. They were not diplomats. They were assassins. The moment they saw him, they attacked. Marcus ran. He dodged through corridors he did not know, desperately seeking an exit. Plasma bolts burned the walls around him. He could hear the assassins shouting to each other in Volante, coordinating their hunt. They called him the Human Witness and spoke of finishing what should have been done years ago. He was cornered in a cargo bay when the crystal around his neck began to glow. Marcus grabbed it in surprise. It was hot against his palm, pulsing with light he had never seen before. Suddenly, a hologram burst forth from its center. He saw a face he had never forgotten, though it had changed. Lyra looked older now, more serious. Her silver-blue features had hardened into something regal and determined. But her violet eyes still held that same fierce spark he remembered. "Marcus," her image said, "if you are seeing this, I have failed to reach you in time. The crystal contains proof of my identity and my enemy's treachery. They will never stop hunting you now. I am sorry. I never meant to bring you into my war." Her voice cracked with emotion. "But you are the only one I trust. Please, find the Temple of First Light. Find me. The coordinates are encoded in this message. Be careful. Trust no one wearing the colors of House Morathax." The hologram faded. The assassins burst through the door. But Marcus was no longer the same frightened man who had been running. Something had changed inside him. He had a purpose now. He had a direction. And he had proof that the girl he saved was real, was important, and was in terrible danger. He fought his way out of that station with nothing but desperation and luck. He stole a small shuttle and escaped into the void just as the assassins' ship prepared to destroy the station entirely. Floating alone in the darkness between stars, Marcus looked at the crystal in his hand. It showed him coordinates deep in Volanti space, far beyond anywhere humans had ever traveled. He thought about what awaited him there. An empire in chaos. Enemies who wanted him dead. A girl who had become something more than he could have imagined. He set course for the Temple of First Light. For 3 years, Marcus Chun had wandered without purpose. Now, finally, he had somewhere to go. He had someone who needed him. And he was done running. The hunt was over. The journey had begun. Marcus Chen had dreamed of the stars since he was a boy growing up in the crowded streets of New Shanghai. Now, at 24 years old, he stood on the observation deck of Orbital Station Kepler-7 and watched cargo ships drift between the stars like fireflies. In 48 hours, everything he had worked for would finally come true. The promotion to senior cultural liaison was almost in his hands. 3 years of studying alien languages. 3 years of perfect service. 3 years of saying yes to every difficult assignment. It was all about to pay off. He smiled to himself and checked the time. Shore leave would end soon, and he needed to return to the diplomatic vessel where he served. The UES Horizon waited for him, and so did his future. Marcus made his way through the station's upper levels, past the expensive restaurants and clean corridors where diplomats and wealthy traders conducted their business. But his path took him through the lower decks, where the lights flickered and the air smelled of engine grease and cheap food. This was where the common workers lived, where smugglers made deals in shadowed corners, and where security officers rarely bothered to patrol. He was thinking about the speech he would give when he received his promotion. When he heard the scream, it was not a loud scream. It was the kind of sound someone makes when they are too afraid to scream properly, when terror has stolen most of their voice. Marcus stopped walking. His training told him to keep moving. His captain had warned him many times about getting involved in situations that did not concern him. Diplomatic incidents could destroy careers faster than any enemy weapon, but his feet carried him toward the sound anyway. He found them in a dead-end corridor near the waste recycling units. 5 Krell mercenaries, their scaled skin gleaming under the dim lights, their tusked mouths twisted into cruel grins. They had cornered someone against the wall. Marcus could see silver-blue skin, torn clothing, and violet eyes wide with fear. It was a girl. A Volanthi girl, though she looked no older than a human teenager. The Volanthi were mysterious beings who ruled an empire spanning half the galaxy. Humans rarely saw them, and when they did, the Volanthi were always surrounded by guards and wrapped in fine robes. This girl had neither. Her clothes were simple and ripped. Bruises marked her arms. She clutched a small crystal to her chest as if it were more valuable than her own life. The largest Krell grabbed her arm and yanked her forward. She cried out in pain. Marcus knew he should walk away. He knew that interfering with Krell mercenaries could get him killed. He knew that even if he survived, the security footage would show everything, and his career would be over. He knew all of these things, and they made perfect sense. He stepped into the corridor anyway. "Let her go," he said. The Krell turned to look at him. The largest one, clearly the leader, laughed. It was an ugly sound, like rocks grinding together. "Human thinks he is brave," the leader said. "Human thinks wrong. Walk away, little creature. This is Krell business." "She is hurt and scared," Marcus replied. "That makes it my business." The leader released the girl and walked toward Marcus. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with arms as thick as tree trunks. "Last chance, human. Walk away or die." Marcus thought about his promotion. He thought about his family back on Earth, counting on him to succeed. He thought about everything he would lose. Then he looked at the girl. She stared at him with those violet eyes, and he saw something there beyond fear. He saw a fierce defiance, a refusal to surrender, a spark that the Krell had not managed to crush. Marcus attacked. He was not a soldier. He had never been trained for combat. But he had grown up in the slums, where boys learned to fight dirty or they did not survive. He went for the leader's eyes first, then kicked hard at the knee joint where Krell armor was weakest. The leader roared in surprise and pain. The other 4 mercenaries rushed forward. Marcus grabbed a loose pipe from the wall and swung it with all his strength. He caught one across the face and ducked under another's wild punch. He was faster than them, smaller, harder to hit. But there were too many. A fist connected with his ribs. He felt something crack. Another blow caught his jaw and sent him spinning into the wall. Blood filled his mouth. Through blurred vision, he saw the girl watching, frozen with shock. "Run!" He shouted at her. She did not run. Instead, she did something with the crystal, and suddenly the lights in the corridor exploded. In the darkness and confusion, Marcus felt a small hand grab his arm. The girl pulled him through a maintenance hatch he had not even noticed. They crawled through narrow passages meant for repair robots, and somehow, impossibly, they escaped. They emerged in a storage area far from the fight. Marcus collapsed against a container, clutching his broken ribs. The girl knelt beside him, her silver-blue face filled with worry. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was soft, musical. "Why did you help me?" "You do not know me." Marcus coughed and tasted blood. "You needed help." That was enough. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, very gently, she touched his forehead. Warmth spread through his body, and the pain in his ribs faded slightly. Not gone, but bearable. "What is your name?" she asked. "Marcus." "Marcus-chun." "I am Lyra," she said. "Thank you, Marcus-chun. No one has ever done such a thing for me." By morning, security forces had reviewed the footage. Marcus was arrested for disrupting interspecies commerce and assaulting registered mercenaries. His captain visited him in the brig, face tight with anger and disappointment. "You threw everything away," the captain said. "For what?" "Some alien girl who vanished the moment you were captured?" But Lyra had not vanished. She came to visit him that night, slipping past guards in ways Marcus could not understand. She looked different now, cleaned up, her injuries somehow healed. She offered to disappear forever, to let him claim he had been drugged or confused. Marcus refused. "I made a choice," he told her. "I would make it again." Her eyes filled with tears. She pressed the small crystal into his hands. "Keep this safe," she whispered. "One day, you will understand why." Then she was gone. 1 week later, Marcus was dishonorably discharged. His career was over. His dreams were ashes. He packed his few belongings and prepared to leave the only life he had ever wanted. He did not know that Lyra watched him from the shadows, her heart breaking. He did not know that she was far more than a frightened girl. He did not know that his simple act of kindness had changed the fate of 2 civilizations. All he knew was that he had made a choice, and he did not regret it